He sat alone in a penthouse worth $40 million, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city like a conquered kingdom, and felt absolutely nothing. Marcus Chen had built an empire that stretched across 3 continents. His investment firm managed assets worth billions. His name opened doors that remained locked to presidents and princes. He had everything a man could want, and yet, on that cold February evening, he sat in his leather chair, staring at the skyline, wondering when the last time was that he had felt genuinely happy, not satisfied, not accomplished, not vindicated, happy. The question haunted him because he could not remember the answer. His phone buzzed incessantly on the mahogany desk beside him. 16 missed calls from his executive team, 23 unread messages from business partners, each one carefully worded to extract something from him. His ex-wife had sent another legal document through her attorney. His son, whom he barely knew anymore, had requested another wire transfer to cover expenses at his private university. Everyone wanted something. Everyone needed something. And Marcus had learned, through decades of bitter experience, that every person in his life saw him as a resource to be extracted, a vault to be cracked, a means to their particular end. He had stopped trusting people somewhere around his 3rd betrayal. By the 10th, he had built walls so high that even he could barely remember what existed beyond them. The irony was not lost on him. He had spent his entire adult life accumulating wealth, building security, creating an impenetrable fortress of financial power, and all it had bought him was the most expensive loneliness money could purchase. His therapist, whom he paid $400 per hour, called it defensive isolation. Marcus called it pattern recognition. When everyone who gets close to you eventually shows their true agenda, keeping your distance stops being paranoia and starts being wisdom. Or so he told himself. The evening Marcus met Elena Rodriguez, he was not looking for life lessons. He was not seeking wisdom or transformation or any of the things people claim to find in chance encounters. He was simply trying to escape a charity gala that his public relations team insisted he attend. The event was held at the Grandview Hotel, a glittering affair where wealthy donors wrote checks to feel better about their fortunes while networking for their next deal. Marcus had perfected the art of the minimum viable appearance. Arrive on time, make a generous donation publicly, shake the right hands, leave before dessert. He was heading toward the side exit, avoiding the main ballroom where a string quartet played for an audience that was not really listening, when he nearly collided with a girl in the service hallway. She was maybe 12 years old, wearing an oversized coat that had clearly been handed down multiple times, clutching a small notebook against her chest. Her eyes were dark and alert, and when she looked up at him, she did not have the reaction he had grown accustomed to seeing. No recognition, no calculation, no immediate assessment of what he might be worth. Just surprise, and then a quick apology. Sorry, mister. I was not supposed to be in this part. I am looking for the kitchen entrance. Her English carried the rhythms of another language underneath, and Marcus registered that she was probably the daughter of one of the catering staff. He should have simply nodded and continued on his way. That would have been the efficient choice, the safe choice. But something about the way she held that notebook, protected against her chest like it contained something infinitely precious, made him pause. What do you have there? He asked, and immediately wondered why he cared. Elena looked down at the notebook, then back up at him with an expression that suggested she was weighing whether this stranger could be trusted with the truth. My observations, she finally said. I write down things I notice, about people, about how the world works. My teacher says that if you pay attention, everything teaches you something. Marcus almost smiled at that. Everything teaches you something. He had learned plenty from his observations. He had learned that business partners will smile while plotting to steal your clients. He had learned that family members will express concern about your well-being while calculating their inheritance. He had learned that romantic love is just another transaction, dressed up in better marketing. And what have you observed tonight? He asked, genuinely curious now despite himself. Elena glanced back toward the ballroom, where laughter and conversation spilled into the hallway. I observed that everyone in that room is wearing very expensive things, but nobody is actually looking at each other. They look at the things, the watches and the dresses and the jewelry, but not the faces. Not really. My mama is working in the kitchen tonight, and she told me that truly wealthy people are the ones who see other people as people, not as things. She says that is the difference between having money and having richness. The words landed with unexpected weight. Marcus studied this girl who could not be more than 12, standing in a service hallway, wearing a coat she had probably gotten from a donation bin, holding a notebook worth maybe $2, and speaking with more clarity about wealth than anyone at the gala inside. Your mother sounds like a wise woman, he said carefully. She is the wisest person I know, Elena replied without hesitation. She has been working 3 jobs since my papa died 2 years ago. She says we are poor in money, but rich in other ways. I did not understand that at first. I thought it was just something she said to make me feel better about not having things other kids have. But then I started really paying attention, and I realized she was right. Marcus leaned against the wall, forgetting entirely about his planned exit. Right about what? Elena opened her notebook, flipping through pages covered in careful handwriting. About how being poor teaches you things that having everything cannot teach you. Like, I know which of my neighbors will share food when we run out before payday. I know how to make a meal from almost nothing. I know how to fix things instead of throwing them away. I know how to be happy with small things, because that is all there is sometimes. My friend Jessica, her family has a lot of money, and she has everything, but she is not happy. She cannot be happy unless she gets something new. It is like she has a hole inside her that never fills up, no matter what goes in. The observation struck Marcus with uncomfortable precision. He thought about his penthouse filled with things he barely noticed anymore, about the cars he owned but rarely drove, about the expensive meals he ate without tasting, about the hole inside himself that had never filled up, no matter what went in. Maybe your friend Jessica has not learned what you have learned, he said quietly. Maybe, Elena agreed. Or maybe she has not needed to learn it yet. My mama says that sometimes people do not learn the most important lessons until they lose something big. She says suffering is a very good teacher if you pay attention to what it is trying to teach you. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest, just slightly. This girl, this child standing in a service hallway, was articulating truths that his $400 per hour therapist had been circling around for months. But hearing it from Elena felt different. There was no clinical distance, no professional detachment, just raw, honest observation from someone who had actually lived what she was talking about. You are very young to understand such things, he said. Elena shrugged. I think being poor makes you grow up faster. You have to pay attention to everything, because everything matters when you do not have much. Like, I notice which stores throw away food that is still good, so we can get it before it goes to waste. I notice which bus drivers are kind and which ones make you feel bad for using a reduced fare card. I notice how my mama's face looks when she is too tired, but still smiling for me. Poor people cannot afford to not pay attention. The truth of it resonated in a way that made Marcus uncomfortable. He had spent years learning to not pay attention to people, to see them as variables in equations, as potential threats or potential assets. He had trained himself to read balance sheets and market trends and risk assessments, but he had forgotten how to simply notice another human being without calculating their angle. What is your name? He asked. Elena Rodriguez. What is yours? Marcus Chen. She did not recognize the name, which should not have been refreshing, but somehow was. Nice to meet you, Marcus. Do you work here at the hotel? He almost laughed. No. I was attending the event in the ballroom. Oh, she looked at his expensive suit, his handmade shoes, his watch that cost more than her mother probably earned in a year. So you are one of the people who does not look at faces. The words should have been an insult, but Elena delivered them with simple matter-of-factness, as if she were commenting on the weather. And Marcus realized with sudden, uncomfortable clarity that she was absolutely right. When was the last time he had truly looked at someone, really seen them, the way this girl was seeing him right now? I suppose I am, he admitted. That is sad, Elena said, and it was the kindness in her voice that made the words bearable. Not judgment, just genuine sadness for what he was missing. There is so much to see in faces. My mama says faces tell the truth that words try to hide. She says if you really look at someone, you can see if they are lonely or scared or hurting. And then you can decide to be kind even when they do not ask for it. Marcus thought about all the faces he had stopped looking at. His ex-wife, in the final months of their marriage, when she was clearly unhappy, but he was too focused on a merger to notice. His son, during their awkward monthly dinners, looking for something Marcus did not know how to give. His employees, reduced to performance metrics and quarterly reviews. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped seeing people and started seeing only what they could do for him or to him. Elena, who taught you to pay attention like this? He asked. Life, I guess. And my mama? And being poor. She said it without self-pity, just as a statement of fact. When you do not have money to buy solutions to problems, you have to understand people. You have to know who will help you and who will not. You have to be able to read situations fast because you cannot afford to make big mistakes. Poor people are very good at reading people. We have to be. She paused, considering something, then added, rich people do not have to be good at it. They can buy new friends if the old ones are mean. They can hire people to solve problems. They can leave situations they do not like. So maybe they forget how to really see people because they do not have to. The analysis was so accurate, it made Marcus uncomfortable. How many relationships had he simply purchased his way out of? How many problems had he solved by throwing money at them rather than actually understanding what was wrong? How many people had he dismissed because it was easier to hire someone new than to invest in seeing who they really were? You should probably write that observation in your notebook, he said. Elena smiled for the first time, and it transformed her entire face. I will, right after I write about the sad man in the hallway who forgot how to look at faces. Is that what I am? I think so. You have the look my mama gets sometimes when she thinks I am asleep. Like you are carrying something heavy, and there is nobody to help you carry it because you will not let anyone close enough. Marcus felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with business or money or any of the usual metrics by which he measured interactions. This girl had looked at him for 5 minutes and seen something his therapist had needed 6 months to identify. What if there is a good reason for not letting people close? He asked quietly. Elena considered this seriously, as if his question deserved her full attention. Maybe there is. Maybe people hurt you. Maybe they took advantage. Maybe they made you think you could trust them, and then they did not deserve it. Those are all good reasons to be careful. But Marcus, being careful is different from being closed. If you close yourself completely, you do not just keep out the bad people, you keep out everyone, including the people who might actually be good. How do you know who is actually good? You do not. Not for sure. That is the scary part. But my mama says that living without trusting anyone is not really living. It is just waiting to die while your heart is still beating. She says you have to be brave enough to risk being hurt again, or you end up hurting yourself worse by being alone. The wisdom was almost unbearable coming from someone so young. Marcus had built an entire philosophy around protecting himself, around never being vulnerable again, around maintaining control through distance and wealth and power. And here was a 12-year-old girl standing in a service hallway, holding a $2 notebook, explaining to him that his sophisticated defense system was actually a prison. Marcus did not immediately respond to Elena's observation about living while your heart is still beating. The words sat between them in the hallway, heavy with truth, while the muffled sounds of the gala continued behind closed doors. He found himself wondering when he had stopped actually living and started merely existing in increasingly expensive spaces. The thought was disturbing enough that he tried to redirect the conversation. Your notebook, he said, gesturing toward it. What else have you written in there? Elena hugged it closer, protective but not defensive. Lots of things. I have been keeping it for 8 months now. My teacher, Miss Patterson, she gave it to me after my papa died. She said that sometimes when life is hard, writing down what you notice helps you make sense of things. She said that every person is a scientist of their own life, collecting data about how the world works. And what data have you collected? She opened the notebook again, more willing now to share. I wrote about how my neighbor, Mr. Phillips, pretends to be grumpy, but he always leaves extra vegetables from his garden on our doorstep. I wrote about how the librarian, Miss Chen, remembers what books I like even though she sees hundreds of kids. I wrote about how my friend Marco shares his lunch with me on days when I do not have much, even though his family does not have much either. I wrote about how being poor shows you who has a good heart, because people with good hearts help even when there is nothing in it for them. Marcus felt the contrast between her observations and his own worldview like a physical weight. She was collecting evidence of human goodness, while he had spent years collecting evidence of human selfishness. They were both scientists of life, as her teacher had said, but they were studying completely different aspects of the same species. "Do you only write about good things?" he asked. "No, I also write about the hard things." I wrote about how some kids at school make fun of my clothes. I wrote about how the landlord looks at my mama like she is dirt on his shoe when she has to ask for more time to pay rent. I wrote about how sometimes I am so hungry at night that I cannot sleep and my mama does not eat dinner so I can have more. I wrote about how it feels to be invisible, to walk through the world and have people look right through you like you are not there. Her voice remained steady, factual, as if she were reporting on the weather rather than describing her own pain. Marcus recognized the technique. It was the same emotional distance he employed in board meetings when discussing layoffs or company closures. Remove yourself from the feeling and you can speak about anything. But hearing it from a 12-year-old girl made the survival mechanism seem tragic rather than professional. "That must be very difficult," he said, and the words felt inadequate even as he spoke them. "It is difficult," Elena agreed, "but it also teaches you things. Like, when you are invisible, you see how people really are. You see how they treat the waiter or the janitor or the homeless person on the corner. You see who has kindness in them and who only has kindness for people who matter to them. Being poor is like having a superpower for seeing the truth about people, a superpower you would probably rather not have. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I would rather have money for food and a warm apartment and not worry if we will be evicted. But I would not want to be rich if it meant I stopped seeing people the way I see them now. My friend Jessica, the one I told you about, she does not see the janitor at school. She does not see the lunch lady. She does not even really see the kids who are not in her group. It is like the world is divided into people who matter and people who are just background. I think that would be a lonely way to live, even if you had everything." Marcus thought about his own assistant, Patricia, who had worked for him for 7 years. He could not remember the last time he had asked her about her life beyond work. He knew she was efficient and professional and always anticipated his needs. But he did not know if she had children or what she did on weekends or what mattered to her beyond the tasks he assigned. She was not background exactly, but she was not foreground either. She was functional. And suddenly, that seemed like a terrible thing to reduce a person to. "Elena," he said slowly, "what do you think would happen if someone who is rich actually learned to see people the way you do?" She tilted her head, considering. "I think they would be happier. Maybe not comfortable happy, because once you really see people, you see their pain too, and that is hard. But real happy, the kind that comes from actually connecting with other humans instead of just moving through space near them. My mama says that human beings are not supposed to be alone. We are pack animals, like wolves or dolphins. We need each other. And money can buy you a lot of things, but it cannot buy you that feeling of belonging to other people. You have to earn that by being real and letting others be real with you." The wisdom was so simple and so profound that Marcus felt something shift in his understanding of his own life. He had spent decades building walls, accumulating wealth, creating safety through distance and control, and all of it had led him to this moment, standing in a hotel hallway, learning more from a poor 12-year-old girl than from any business mentor or strategic advisor or self-help book he had ever encountered. "Your mother sounds like an extraordinary woman," he said. "I would like to meet her." Alana's face brightened. "Really? She is in the kitchen, but she might get in trouble if she stops working. The catering company is very strict. What if I went to the kitchen and asked to speak with her?" Would that help? I do not know. Maybe. But Marcus, why do you want to meet my mama? It was a fair question, and Marcus tried to articulate an answer that made sense. Because I think I have been living my life in a way that is making me miserable, and you and your mother seem to know something about living that I have forgotten, or maybe never learned. And I think I would like to understand how someone with so little can seem to have so much more than someone like me. Elena smiled again, that transforming expression that made her look both ancient and entirely childlike. That is a good reason. But you should know that my mama will probably make you uncomfortable. She has a way of seeing right through people. She will know you are sad even if you try to hide it. She will know you are lonely even if you pretend you are fine. And she will probably try to feed you something, because that is what she does when she thinks someone needs taking care of. I think I can handle that, Marcus said, though he was not entirely sure he could. They walked together through the service corridors of the hotel, Elena leading the way with the confidence of someone who had learned to navigate spaces where she was not supposed to be. Marcus followed and found himself noticing details he normally would have overlooked. The way the lighting changed from the elegant warmth of the guest areas to the harsh fluorescence of the working spaces. The sounds of machinery and rapid Spanish instructions and the clash of pots and pans. The smell of food preparation, completely different from the refined aromas that reached the dining room. This was the infrastructure that made luxury possible, and Marcus had spent his entire adult life benefiting from it without once considering the humans who made it function. Elena pushed through a door marked kitchen staff only, and they entered a world of controlled chaos. At least 20 people moved through the space with practiced efficiency, each focused on their specific task in a carefully choreographed operation. Steam rose from industrial stoves. Orders were called out in English and Spanish. Someone was plating desserts with precision that would have impressed Marcus's executive team. "Mama," Elena called out, and a woman near the back of the kitchen looked up. Maria Rodriguez was probably in her late 30s, though the kind of exhaustion she carried made her look older. She wore the standard white catering uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, her face showing the particular strain of someone working the third of 3 jobs. But when she saw Elena, her entire expression softened with a love so evident that Marcus felt like an intruder for witnessing it. "Mia, what are you doing in here? I told you to wait in the break room." Maria's eyes shifted to Marcus, taking in his expensive suit, his obvious wealth. The fact that her daughter had somehow ended up in the company of someone who clearly did not belong in a service kitchen. Her expression became guarded, protective. "Is there a problem?" "No problem," Elena said quickly. "Mama, this is Marcus. I met him in the hallway, and we were talking about observations, and he wanted to meet you." Maria wiped her hands on her apron, confusion and concern competing on her face. She looked at Marcus with an assessment that he recognized from countless business negotiations. She was trying to determine threat level, motive, angle, but underneath the wariness, he saw the same quality that Elena possessed, the ability to really see another person. "Mr. Chen," Marcus said, extending his hand, "I apologize for interrupting your work. Your daughter and I had a conversation that I found remarkably enlightening, and she mentioned that much of her wisdom comes from you. I wanted to introduce myself and express my admiration." Maria did not take his hand immediately. She looked at Elena, some silent communication passing between mother and daughter. Elena nodded slightly, as if to say that this stranger was safe, or at least worth the risk of trust. Only then did Maria accept the handshake. "Maria Rodriguez," she said. Her hand was warm and rough from work, her grip firm. "My daughter is very friendly and very trusting, sometimes too trusting. I hope she was not bothering you." "Not at all. She was teaching me things I desperately needed to learn." Maria's eyebrows raised slightly at that. "My Elena teaching a man in a suit that probably costs more than I make in 3 months. That is an interesting picture." There was no hostility in her words, just a frank acknowledgement of the vast economic distance between them. Marcus appreciated the directness. It was refreshing after years of people pretending that wealth gaps did not exist or did not matter. "The most expensive education I have received," Marcus said truthfully, came from institutions that taught me how to make money. Your daughter just taught me more about living in 20 minutes than I learned in 4 years at Harvard." Maria studied him for a long moment, and Marcus had the distinct feeling of being X-rayed. She was looking past his clothes and his watch, and his carefully maintained professional demeanor to something deeper. Whatever she saw must have satisfied some internal criteria, because her expression softened slightly. "Elena has a gift for seeing what matters," Maria said. "It is not always a comfortable gift to have. Sometimes I wish she could be like other children, concerned with toys and games instead of human nature. But life gave us the circumstances we have, and we make the best of them." "She told me about your husband," Marcus said carefully. "I am very sorry for your loss." Something flickered across Maria's face. Grief that had been folded up and put away because there was no time to properly feel it. Not when there were 3 jobs to work and a daughter to raise and rent to pay. "Thank you. Carlos was a good man. He would have liked that Elena is learning to see the world clearly. He always said that poor people cannot afford illusions. Your daughter mentioned that being poor is like having a superpower for seeing truth." "Did she?" Maria smiled slightly. "Yes, that sounds like something she would say. And it is true, in a way. When you have nothing, you see everything. When you have everything, you can afford to see nothing. That is why wealthy people are often the most blind." The observation landed with the same impact as Elena's words. Marcus thought about his own blindness. All the things he had trained himself not to see, because seeing them would require feeling something. And feeling things meant being vulnerable, and being vulnerable meant being hurt. "Is that why you think I came to the kitchen?" Marcus asked. "Because I am blind and need help seeing?" Maria shrugged. "I think you came to the kitchen because my daughter looked at you and saw someone who is hurting. Elena collects broken things. Broken toys, broken furniture, broken people. She thinks everything can be fixed if you just pay enough attention to it. So when she sees someone who is broken, she wants to help. Even if that person is a wealthy stranger who could probably buy this entire hotel." "I could," Marcus confirmed. "But I do not think money would fix what is broken in me." "No," Maria agreed. "It would not. Money is a tool. It can build or destroy, feed or starve, heal or hurt. But it cannot make you whole if you do not know what pieces are missing. And from the way my daughter is looking at you, I would guess that you have been missing pieces for a very long time." Marcus felt the truth of it settle into his bones. Missing pieces. That was exactly right. He had built an empire, while fundamental parts of himself had gone missing. Lost somewhere in the process of protecting himself from more betrayal, more pain, more disappointment. "How does someone find the missing pieces?" he asked. Maria glanced around the kitchen, where her coworkers were studiously pretending not to listen to this strange conversation between one of their own and a man who clearly did not belong in their world. She made a decision, pulled off her apron, and gestured toward a door that led to what looked like a small break room. "Manuel," she called to one of the other workers, "I am taking my break now." 10 minutes. They moved into the break room, a cramped space with a few chairs, a small table, and a refrigerator that hummed loudly. Maria sat down and indicated that Marcus should do the same. Elena perched on a third chair, her notebook open, ready to record whatever observations came next. "Finding missing pieces is not like finding lost keys," Maria said. "You cannot just retrace your steps until you discover where you left them. Missing pieces of yourself are different. Sometimes they were taken from you. Sometimes you gave them away. Sometimes you buried them because they hurt too much to hold. But getting them back requires going to places that are uncomfortable." "What kind of places?" "The places where you were hurt. The places where you learned to stop trusting. The places where you decided that being safe was more important than being whole. You have to go back to those places, not physically, but emotionally. You have to look at what happened and understand that protecting yourself by building walls also traps you inside those walls." Marcus thought about his third betrayal, the one that had really changed him. His business partner, someone he had considered a true friend, had systematically been stealing from the company while making Marcus believe they were building something together. The discovery had been devastating, not because of the money, But because it confirmed his deepest fear that everyone was ultimately selfish, that trust was a luxury he could not afford. What if going back to those places just confirms that building the walls was the right choice? He asked. Then you learn nothing and nothing changes, Maria said simply. But I do not think that is what will happen. I think if you really look at what happened, with honesty, you will see that the problem was not that you trusted. The problem was that you trusted the wrong people, or you trusted them in the wrong way, or you ignored the signs that they were not trustworthy. Trust is not the problem. Indiscriminate trust is the problem. Elena looked up from her notebook. Mama says that smart trust is different from stupid trust. Smart trust is when you pay attention, and you trust people slowly, and you let them prove themselves. Stupid trust is when you trust everyone the same amount right away, and then act surprised when some of them hurt you. And how do you practice smart trust? Marcus asked. When you have trained yourself not to trust at all. Maria leaned forward, her expression intense. You start small. You start with people who have nothing to gain from you. People who cannot use you or take from you because you have what they need most, which is often not money at all. You practice trusting someone who wants nothing more than to be seen as a human being. Someone like the janitor in your building, or the person who makes your coffee, or the homeless veteran you walk past every day on your way to work. The suggestion was so unexpected that Marcus actually laughed. You are telling me to practice trust with homeless people? I am telling you to practice seeing people as people, Maria corrected. And yes, homeless people are excellent teachers because they cannot take anything from you that you are not willing to give. They cannot steal your company or betray your secrets or manipulate you for financial gain. They can only be human beings in your presence, and you can only be a human being in theirs. That is pure interaction, without all the complications that money brings. Marcus considered this. And what would I do with these pure interactions? You would remember what it feels like to connect with another person without calculating risk and benefit, Maria said. You would remember that humans need each other, not for what they can provide, but simply because we are made to be in community. You would start to feel the missing pieces returning, one small interaction at a time. Marcus left the hotel that night with Elena's handwriting in his phone. She had written down her mother's words about smart trust and pure interactions, about practicing connection with people who had nothing to gain from him. He had expected to feel skeptical or dismissive once he was back in his car, back in his world of leather seats and climate control, and the familiar distance between himself and everyone else. But instead, he felt something he had not experienced in years. Curiosity about something that was not a business opportunity, or a market trend, or a strategic advantage. He felt curious about whether Maria Rodriguez might be right. The hypothesis needed testing, he told himself, falling back into the language of analysis and data collection that had governed his adult life. If connecting with people who had no agenda could somehow restore the missing pieces Maria had identified, then it should be measurable, observable. He could approach it the way Elena approached her notebook observations, collecting data about what happened when he actually tried to see people instead of simply moving through space near them. The next morning, Marcus did something he had not done in over a decade. Instead of having his driver take him directly to the office, he asked to be dropped off 6 blocks away. He would walk the remaining distance, and he would pay attention. The city looked different at street level. Marcus had spent so many years insulated in cars and private elevators and executive floors that he had forgotten what it felt like to actually move through the world alongside other humans. The sidewalk was crowded with people heading to work, each absorbed in their own concerns. A woman juggled a coffee cup and her phone while trying to keep her coat closed against the February wind. A man in a maintenance uniform sat on a bench eating breakfast from a paper bag, his eyes closed as if storing up rest before his shift began. A young mother pushed a stroller while simultaneously consoling a toddler who did not want to wear mittens. Marcus walked past all of them, and for the first time in recent memory, he actually looked at their faces. Elena had been right. There was so much to see in faces. The woman with the coffee looked stressed but determined, the kind of expression that suggested she was managing more than should be manageable, but refusing to let it break her. The maintenance worker looked bone-tired, the deep exhaustion of someone working a job that never really ended because something was always breaking, always needing attention. The young mother looked simultaneously overwhelmed and fiercely protective, love and frustration competing in her eyes as she dealt with the small domestic rebellion over mittens. These were entire lives, Marcus realized, complex inner worlds every bit as real as his own, hopes and fears and struggles that continued, whether he noticed them or not. The revelation should not have been surprising, but somehow was. He had spent so long reducing people to functions and categories that he had forgotten they were actually people. 3 blocks from his office, Marcus encountered the homeless veteran Maria had mentioned. He was there every day, Marcus suddenly realized. Always in the same spot near the subway entrance, sitting on a piece of cardboard with a sign that read "Homeless Vet." Anything helps. God bless. Marcus had walked past him hundreds of times without actually registering his existence. He was part of the background, the urban scenery, no more significant than the mailbox or the fire hydrant. But this morning, Marcus stopped. The man looked up, surprised. He was probably in his 50s, though life had aged him in ways that made precision difficult. His face was weathered and lined, his beard streaked with gray, but his eyes were clear and alert, and when they met Marcus's gaze, there was intelligence there, and wariness. The particular guardedness of someone who had learned that attention from strangers could go either direction, toward kindness or cruelty, and there was no way to predict which until it happened. "Good morning," Marcus said, and his voice sounded strange to his own ears. When was the last time he had greeted someone without an agenda? "Morning," the man replied cautiously. His voice was rough, but not unkind. "Help you with something?" The question was almost amusing. This man, who had nothing, was asking if he could help Marcus, who had everything. But Marcus understood the dynamic. The veteran was establishing terms of engagement, making clear that he was not a passive recipient of charity, but a person capable of exchange. "Actually," Marcus said, "I was wondering if you might help me with something. I am trying to learn how to see people better, to actually notice them. And someone told me that the best way to learn that is through honest conversation with people who have nothing to gain from lying to me. Would you be willing to talk for a few minutes?" The veteran's expression shifted from wariness to confusion. "You want to talk to me? If you are willing, I can offer to buy you breakfast in exchange for the conversation. You want to buy me breakfast and talk to me?" The man repeated it, as if checking to make sure he had heard correctly. "Not give me money and walk away. Not ignore me and pretend I am invisible like every other person in a fancy suit. You want to actually talk?" "Yes." The veteran studied Marcus for a long moment, that same X-ray assessment that Maria Rodriguez had employed. Then he slowly stood up, his movements careful, as if his body hurt in multiple places. "All right then, there is a diner 2 blocks that way. They know me there. They will let us sit if you are buying." They walked together to the diner, an awkward pairing that drew looks from other pedestrians. Marcus in his $3,000 suit, walking beside a homeless man in layers of worn clothing. The contrast was so stark, it was almost theatrical, but Marcus forced himself to ignore the stares and focus on the man beside him. "What is your name?" Marcus asked. Robert Mitchell." "Everyone calls me Mitch." "Marcus Chen." "Everyone calls me Marcus or Mr. Chen, depending on whether they work for me." Mitch glanced over. "You some kind of big shot?" "Some kind, yes. And you really want to talk to me? This is not some kind of social experiment or video thing where you pretend to be nice and then put it online." The question revealed the particular indignity of modern homelessness, where even gestures of kindness could be exploitative, performed for views and likes rather than genuine connection. Marcus felt a flash of anger on Mitch's behalf, that a person could be reduced to content for someone else's social media narrative. No video, no experiment beyond my own attempt to become less of an isolated, miserable person. Just conversation? Mitch laughed, a short bark of surprised amusement. "Well, that is the most honest thing anyone has said to me in months." "All right, Marcus Chun, let us have this conversation." The diner was exactly the kind of place Marcus never entered. Cracked vinyl booths, a counter with swivel stools, laminated menus advertising breakfast specials in faded photos, the smell of coffee and bacon grease, the sound of orders being called to the kitchen in shorthand that sounded like a different language. A waitress looked up as they entered, her expression shifting from neutral to concerned when she saw Mitch, then to outright confusion when she registered that Mitch was with Marcus. "Booth or counter, Mitch?" she asked, and Marcus noted the kindness in her tone. She knew him. She saw him. "Booth, if that is okay, Jenny." "Sure thing, honey. Sit wherever you like." They slid into a booth near the back. Jenny brought menus and coffee without asking, and Marcus realized that Mitch must come here regularly enough that his order was known. When she left, Mitch wrapped his hands around the coffee cup as if absorbing its warmth into his bones. "So," Mitch said, "you want to learn how to see people. What made you realize you were not seeing them?" Marcus considered how much to share, but Maria's words about honest interaction echoed in his mind. If he wanted pure connection without the complications money brought, he needed to be real. A 12-year-old girl told me I was one of the people who looks at things instead of faces. She said I had forgotten how to actually see other humans. And she was right. Smart kid. Remarkably smart. She and her mother had insights about wealth and poverty and human connection that made me realize how much I have been missing. How isolated I have become. Mitch nodded slowly. Isolation is the real killer. Not hunger, not cold, not even violence. Isolation is what destroys people. Out here on the streets, I have seen people die of loneliness while their bodies were still functioning. And I have met rich people, people with homes and jobs and families, who were just as isolated as any homeless person. Maybe more, because at least out here, we have to rely on each other sometimes. Jenny returned to take their order. Mitch ordered the full breakfast special with an extra side of bacon, and Marcus found himself ordering the same thing, even though he normally ate nothing more than coffee in the mornings. When Jenny left, Marcus leaned forward. "Tell me about isolation," he said. "What does it look like? How does it happen?" Mitch took a long drink of coffee, gathering his thoughts. "It happens gradually. That is the dangerous part. It is not like one day you are connected, and the next day you are alone. It is more like slow erosion. Each time you get hurt, you pull back a little. Each time someone betrays you or disappoints you or fails to understand you, you add another layer of protection. And those layers feel good at first. They feel like wisdom, like you are learning not to be foolish. But eventually, the protection becomes a prison." The words echoed what Maria had said about walls trapping you inside. Marcus thought about his own slow erosion. The gradual withdrawal from genuine connection. When did it happen for you? For me, it started in Afghanistan. I did 3 tours. Saw things that changed how I understood the world. Lost friends who mattered more than family. Came back, and everyone wanted the old Mitch. The guy who left, but that guy was gone. Dead really, just his body kept walking around. I tried to explain what I had seen, what I had lived through, but nobody wanted to hear it. Not really. They wanted the sanitized version, the hero story, not the truth about what war does to a person. Mitch paused, his hands still wrapped around the coffee cup. So I stopped trying to share. I kept it all inside. Got married to a woman who loved the idea of a veteran, but could not handle the reality of a damaged man. Had a daughter who deserved a better father than I could figure out how to be. Started drinking to manage the memories. Lost the job. Lost the marriage, lost my daughter's respect, and through it all, I just kept pulling further inside myself until one day, I realized I was completely alone, even when I was surrounded by people. That is when I ended up on the streets. Was not even a big dramatic thing. Just stopped having anywhere to go, and anyone who cared if I showed up. The story was painful in its honesty. Marcus recognized elements of his own journey in Mitch's description. The gradual withdrawal. The layers of protection that became prison walls. The isolation that happened so slowly you did not notice until you were completely cut off. How do you live with that kind of isolation? Marcus asked quietly. Some days better than others. Out here on the street, you learn to take small connections where you can find them. Jenny here, she sees me. She does not see a homeless vet or a charity case or a problem. She sees Mitch. She remembers how I take my coffee. She asks how I am doing and actually listens to the answer. That matters more than you might think. Jenny appeared with their food, plates piled high with eggs and bacon and hash browns and toast. She set them down with a smile for Mitch. You eat all that, honey. You are too skinny. Yes, ma'am, Mitch said, and there was genuine warmth in the exchange. When she left, Marcus said, she really does see you. She does. And there are others. The guy at the library who lets me sit inside when it is too cold. The woman who runs the shelter, who knows I will not stay overnight, but always makes sure I get a hot meal when I come by. The other vets I see on the street. We look out for each other. Small connections, but they keep you human. They remind you that you still exist, that you still matter, even if the rest of the world has forgotten you. Marcus thought about his own life. Who saw him, really saw him, the way Jenny saw Mitch? His assistant was efficient, but their relationship was purely professional. His ex-wife had sent legal documents. His son asked for money. His business associates wanted access or advantage. None of them were actually seeing Marcus Chen, the human being. They were seeing Marcus Chen, the resource, the obstacle, the means to an end. What if you have money and success and everything material? Marcus said. But nobody actually sees you? What then? Mitch looked at him with something that might have been pity. Then you are poorer than I am, because at least I have Jenny and a few others who know I am real. Who would you have? The question landed with devastating accuracy. Marcus did not have anyone. He had employees and service providers and professional relationships, but nobody who saw him. Nobody who knew how he took his coffee or cared if he showed up or remembered what mattered to him beyond business metrics. I would not have anyone, Marcus admitted. Then you understand what I meant about rich people being just as isolated. Money cannot buy being seen. It cannot purchase genuine connection. If anything, money makes it harder because you never know if people are responding to you or to your bank account. They ate in silence for a few minutes, and Marcus found himself actually tasting the food. Simple diner breakfast. Nothing like the expensive meals he usually consumed without noticing, but somehow more satisfying. Maybe because he was actually present for it. Maybe because he was sharing it with someone who was really there with him, not performing or angling or calculating. Mitch, Marcus said eventually, what would you tell someone who wanted to stop being isolated? Someone who realized they had built walls so high they could not see out anymore? Mitch finished chewing, considering. I would tell them that the walls have to come down brick by brick. You cannot just blow them up all at once, because then you are too vulnerable, too exposed, and you will just build them right back up again. But you can start removing bricks. One connection at a time. One genuine conversation. One moment of actually being seen and seeing someone else. It is slow work, and it is uncomfortable, and sometimes it hurts. But it is the only way back to being human. Start with people who have nothing to gain from you, Marcus said, repeating Maria's advice. Exactly. Start with people like me, or like Jenny, or like that kid with a notebook who called you out in the first place. People who will tell you the truth because they have no reason to lie. People who will see you because they have not been trained to look away. Practice with us, and eventually you will remember how to do it with everyone. Marcus pulled out his wallet, and Mitch's expression immediately shuddered, becoming guarded again. But Marcus simply laid enough cash on the table to cover the meal and a generous tip for Jenny, then put the wallet away. I would like to do this again, Marcus said. If you are willing, same time next week. I will buy breakfast and we talk. No agenda beyond two people actually seeing each other. Mitch studied him, that X-ray assessment again. You are serious. I am serious. I am tired of being isolated. I am tired of building empires while losing myself. And I think you might be able to teach me things I desperately need to learn. What makes you think I have anything to teach a billionaire? Because you understand something I have forgotten. You know what it means to be human without the complications of wealth. You know how to accept small connections as valuable. You know how to be seen. Those are lessons worth more than anything I learned getting my MBA. Mitch was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could see him wrestling with whether to trust this strange offer. Finally, he nodded. All right, same time next week. But Marcus, If you do not show up, if this is just some rich guy feeling temporarily guilty about his privilege, do not bother coming back the week after. I have had enough people make promises they do not keep. I will be here, Marcus said. And he meant it. Marcus kept his promise. The following week, he met Mitch at the same corner at the same time. The week after that, he was there again. And the week after that, what started as an experiment in connection became something Marcus found himself looking forward to with an intensity that surprised him. Thursday mornings with Mitch became the most honest hour of his week, a space where he could remove the armor he wore everywhere else and simply be a person sitting across from another person, sharing breakfast and truth. Through these conversations, Marcus began to understand the architecture of his own isolation. Mitch had a way of asking questions that got underneath the professional polish, past the defenses Marcus had spent years perfecting. Questions like, what do you actually want? And when was the last time you laughed for real? And if you died tomorrow, who would miss the person you are rather than the things you provide? These were not questions anyone in Marcus's professional world would dare ask. But Mitch asked them with the casualness of someone who had nothing to lose, and therefore nothing to fear. And Marcus found himself answering honestly. He told Mitch about his ex-wife, about how their marriage had dissolved not through dramatic conflict, but through slow erasure, each of them becoming less real to the other until they were simply sharing space rather than sharing a life. He told him about his son, about the guilt of having a child who felt more like a stranger than family, who called only when tuition was due or when his mother pressured him to make contact. He told him about the business partner who had betrayed him, about how that betrayal had become the blueprint for all his subsequent relationships, a template of suspicion that he applied to everyone. Mitch listened without judgment, without offering easy solutions or platitudes. He understood that some pain needed to be witnessed rather than fixed, and in that witnessing, Marcus felt something begin to shift. The missing pieces Maria had talked about were not lost objects waiting to be found. They were parts of himself he had buried so deep that he had forgotten they existed. Speaking them aloud in the presence of someone who actually listened was like excavating his own humanity. On their fifth Thursday together, Marcus brought his phone to show Mitch the photos of his son. Michael was 19 now, a sophomore at Yale, studying economics, because that was what was expected of a Chen. In the photos, he looked like a younger version of Marcus, the same sharp features and careful expression. But there was something guarded in Michael's eyes that Marcus recognized with painful clarity. His son had learned isolation early, learned it from watching his father build walls and call it wisdom. He looks like you, Mitch observed. Same way of holding himself, like he is braced for something. He learned that from me, Marcus said quietly. I taught him not to trust people, not deliberately, but through example. He watched me treat everyone like a potential threat. He watched me reduce relationships to transactions. And now he is doing the same thing, and I do not know how to tell him it is a terrible way to live, because I am the one who showed him how. Mitch sipped his coffee, considering. Maybe you do not tell him. Maybe you show him something different. Kids do not listen to what parents say. They watch what parents do. If you want him to learn that connection matters, that being real with people is worth the risk, then you have to live that way yourself. You have to become the example of a different path. I am trying, Marcus said. These Thursday mornings, conversations with people I would have walked past a month ago. I am trying to dismantle the isolation brick by brick, the way you said. I know you are. I see it. You look different than you did that first morning. Less armored. Like you are remembering how to be a person instead of just playing the role of a successful man. The observation struck deep because it was accurate. Marcus did feel different. The world looked different when you actually paid attention to the people in it. He had started greeting his doorman by name, asking about his family, remembering that Jose had a daughter in nursing school and a wife who made tamales that Jose brought to share with the building staff. He had started having actual conversations with Patricia, his assistant, learning that she was passionate about photography and volunteered at an animal shelter on weekends and had dreams of traveling to Japan. He had started noticing the barista who made his coffee every morning, a young woman named Asha, who was putting herself through graduate school and had opinions about everything from politics to poetry. These were small connections, but they were real, and in their reality, they were changing him. But the biggest change was still ahead. It came on a Thursday morning in late March, when Marcus arrived at their usual meeting spot to find Mitch was not alone. A young girl, maybe 13 or 14, sat next to him on the cardboard, her thin frame wrapped in a jacket too large for her dark eyes wary and intelligent. She had the same alertness Marcus had seen in Elena Rodriguez, that particular awareness of someone who had to pay attention to everything because everything mattered. "Marcus," Mitch said, "this is Zoe. She ran away from a foster home 3 days ago. Been staying near my spot because she does not know where else to go. Zoe, this is Marcus. He is learning how to be human again." Zoe looked up at Marcus with an expression that was equal parts defiance and desperation. "I am not going back," she said immediately. "If you are some kind of social worker or cop, I am not going back to that house." Marcus crouched down so he was at eye level with her, remembering Elena's words about really looking at faces. Zoe's face told a story of exhaustion and fear underneath the tough exterior. "I am not a social worker or a cop. I am just someone who has breakfast with Mitch every Thursday and talks about life. You are welcome to join us if you would like a hot meal." Suspicion warred with hunger in her expression. "Why would you buy me breakfast?" "Because Mitch thinks you need one, and I trust Mitch's judgment about who deserves kindness." It was the right answer. Zoe looked at Mitch, some silent communication passing between them, then nodded once. "Okay, but I'm serious about not going back." At the diner, Jenny took one look at Zoe, and her expression shifted into something fiercely maternal. She brought hot chocolate without asking, and when she took Zoe's order, she suggested adding extra bacon and a side of fruit because growing girls need vitamins. Zoe tried to maintain her tough facade, but Marcus could see her defenses cracking in the face of Jenny's uncomplicated kindness. Over breakfast, Zoe's story emerged in fragments. She had been in foster care for 3 years, since her mother died of an overdose and no relatives could be found. The current placement was her 4th. The foster father was not abusive exactly, but he was indifferent, treating the children in his care like contract obligations rather than humans. The foster mother tried, but she was overwhelmed with too many kids and not enough resources. Zoe had endured it until last week when the foster father told her she was too much trouble and would probably be moved to another home anyway, so why did she bother trying? Something in Zoe had broken at that assessment. Not the dramatic kind of breaking that explodes outward, but the quiet kind that collapses inward. She had packed a backpack with what little she owned and walked out in the middle of the night, deciding that being homeless was better than being a burden in a place that did not want her. Marcus listened to her story and felt rage on her behalf. Rage at a system that could treat a child like a bureaucratic problem. Rage at adults who could look at a vulnerable young person and see only inconvenience. Rage at a world where someone like Zoe could fall through cracks wide enough to swallow her whole. But more than rage, he felt something he had not experienced in years. The impulse to help, not as a tax-deductible donation or a strategic philanthropy, but as a direct, personal intervention into another person's life. "Zoe," he said carefully, "you cannot stay on the street. You know that, right? It is not safe for someone your age." Her jaw set stubbornly. "It is safer than some places I have been, maybe, but Mitch will tell you that street life is hard even for adults. For a kid, it is exponentially more dangerous." Mitch nodded. "He is right, Zoe. I can keep an eye out, and there are people I know who would help, but you need more protection than the street can offer. So what am I supposed to do?" Zoe's voice cracked slightly, the tough exterior finally giving way to the frightened child underneath. "Go back to a house where I am not wanted. Wait to be shuffled to another family who does not care. Keep moving from place to place until I age out of the system and end up out here anyway?" Marcus made a decision. It was probably impulsive. It definitely complicated his life in ways he could not fully anticipate. But Elena and Maria and Mitch had all taught him that connection required risk. That being human meant letting yourself care, even when caring was inconvenient. What if there was another option? He said. I have a guest room in my apartment. It has been empty for years. You could stay there, temporarily, while we figure out something better. No foster system. No strangers. Just a safe place to sleep and regular meals while we work on finding a real solution. Zoe stared at him like he had spoken in a foreign language. You are offering to let me live with you? A random homeless kid you just met. Not random. Mitch vouches for you, which means something. And yes, I am offering, with conditions. You would have to go to school. You would have to follow house rules. You would have to let me help you navigate the system to find something permanent that is actually good for you. But in the meantime, you would be safe and fed, and you would not be alone. Why would you do that? Zoe's voice was barely above a whisper. Marcus thought about how to answer. He could cite responsibility or charity, or some noble-sounding motivation. But Mitch had taught him that honesty mattered more than polish. Because a very wise 12-year-old girl taught me that I have been living half a life, and part of becoming whole again means actually caring about other people. Because Mitch showed me that connection is what makes us human. Because I have a son I barely know, and maybe learning to help you will teach me something about how to reach him. And because you deserve better than what you have been given, and I am in a position to provide better, so it seems like the obvious thing to do. Zoe looked at Mitch. Is he for real? I think so, Mitch said. He has been showing up every Thursday for 6 weeks. He listens. He is trying to be better than he was. That counts for something, but I do not know him. He could be anyone. This could be some kind of trap. It could be, Mitch acknowledged. But Zoe, you have to trust someone eventually. You cannot survive alone, no matter how tough you are. And Marcus here, he is rich enough that he does not need anything from you. He is not looking for free labor, or a tax write-off, or whatever other angles you are worried about. I think he is just lonely and trying to figure out how to be connected to people again. And sometimes helping someone else is how you help yourself. Marcus appreciated Mitch's honesty. The way he did not make Marcus out to be some kind of saint, but just a flawed person trying to find his way back to humanity. It was a more convincing argument than any elaborate speech Marcus could have made. Zoe considered for a long moment, fear and hope competing in her expression. Finally, she said, temporary, until we find something better. And if it is weird or wrong, or I do not like it, I leave. No questions, no guilt trips, no drama. Agreed, Marcus said. Temporary, and you can leave whenever you want. But Zoe, give it a real chance. Give yourself a chance to be somewhere safe for a while. She nodded slowly, and Marcus saw her swallow hard, fighting back tears. Okay, I will try it. Jenny appeared with the check, and Marcus handed her his credit card. While she processed it, she leaned over and said quietly to Zoe, Honey, I do not know your story, but I have known Mitch for 2 years, and he is good people. If he says this man is trying to do right by you, I would listen. And if you ever need anything, the diner is here. We take care of our own. Zoe nodded, unable to speak around the emotion in her throat. That afternoon, Marcus took Zoe to his penthouse apartment. She moved through the space like someone in a museum, afraid to touch anything, overwhelmed by the sheer luxury of it. He showed her to the guest room, which had its own bathroom and a view of the city that stretched for miles. Zoe stood at the window for a long time, just staring out at the world spread below her. I have never been this high up before, she said quietly. You can see everything from here. You can see a lot, Marcus agreed, but you cannot see people's faces. You cannot see what really matters. That is something I am learning. Zoe turned from the window. What if I mess this up? What if I am too broken to be helped? The question revealed the core fear underneath all her toughness. Marcus recognized it because he had asked himself similar questions. What if he was too damaged by betrayal to ever trust again? What if his isolation had gone on too long to reverse? What if the missing pieces could not be found? Then we will be broken together while we figure it out, Marcus said. I do not have all the answers, Zoe. I am not some perfect savior who is going to fix your life. I am just someone who's trying to learn how to be human again. And maybe we can learn together. Maybe helping you will help me. Maybe that is how it works. Zoe studied him with those intelligent, wary eyes. "The 12-year-old girl you mentioned, the one who taught you about living half a life. What else did she teach you?" Marcus smiled, thinking of Elena and her notebook. "She taught me that being poor gives you a superpower for seeing truth. She taught me that faces tell you things words try to hide. She taught me that wealthy people often stop seeing people because they can afford to. And she taught me that sometimes the most important lessons come from the people you would least expect, like a homeless vet and a runaway foster kid." "Exactly like that." Zoe nodded slowly. "Okay, I will stay, for now. But Marcus, I am going to be watching you. If you turn out to be just another person who does not really see me, who just wants to feel good about themselves, I will know." "I am very good at seeing truth, too. I would expect nothing less," Marcus said. "Now, are you hungry? I do not actually cook, but I can order food from anywhere in the city. Can we get pizza? Real pizza? Not the cheap frozen kind? We can get the best pizza in New York if you want." Zoe smiled for the first time since he had met her, and it transformed her face the same way Elena's smile had. "Then I definitely want that." While they waited for the pizza, Marcus called his lawyer to start navigating the legal complexities of having a foster child staying with him. Then he called Patricia and asked her to research the best schools in the area, the ones that would challenge Zoe intellectually while supporting her emotionally. Then he sat down at his dining table across from this girl who had been a stranger 8 hours ago and was now his responsibility, and realized that for the first time in years, his apartment did not feel empty. It felt like a home. The first 2 weeks with Zoe in the apartment were an exercise in mutual adjustment and careful boundary setting. Marcus had spent so many years alone that he had forgotten how much space another person required, not just physically but emotionally. Zoe was not a quiet presence. She had opinions about everything from the temperature of the apartment to the news programs. Marcus watched the way he organized his kitchen. She challenged him constantly, testing whether his patience was real or performative, whether his commitment would last past the initial impulse of rescue. Marcus found himself grateful for the challenge. It kept him honest. It forced him to be present in ways he had not been for years. He enrolled Zoe at a private school that specialized in working with students who had experienced trauma and disruption. The principal, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who was no relation despite the shared last name, interviewed both Marcus and Zoe extensively before accepting the placement. She wanted to ensure that this was not a vanity project or a temporary charity case, but a genuine commitment to a child's well-being. "I have seen wealthy people take in disadvantaged kids before," Dr. Chen said bluntly during their meeting. "Sometimes it works. Often it does not. The ones that fail usually fail because the adult is looking for gratitude or transformation or some kind of redemption through the child. Children are not vehicles for adult healing. If you are doing this to fix something in yourself, Mr. Chen, you need to find another way." Marcus appreciated her directness. "I am not going to lie and say there is nothing in this for me. I am learning how to be human again after years of isolation, and having Zoe in my life is part of that learning. But I am also genuinely committed to her well-being. I want her to have stability and education and opportunities that the foster system has not provided. If those two things can coexist, if I can grow while helping her grow, then that seems like a reasonable arrangement." Dr. Chen studied him for a long moment and nodded. "Fair enough. But Mr. Chen, you need to understand that Zoe has been traumatized by instability and abandonment. She will test you constantly. She will push boundaries to see if you will push back or give up. She will sabotage good things because bad things feel more familiar. And if you are not prepared for that, if you are going to bail at the first sign of difficulty, then you are doing more harm than good." "I understand," Marcus said, and he meant it. Mitch had warned him about similar dynamics, explaining that people who had been hurt learned to hurt first as a form of protection. "I am not expecting this to be easy. I am expecting it to be real." Zoe started school the following Monday. Marcus hired a car service to take her, not wanting her to navigate public transportation alone in a city she was still learning. He made sure she had a new laptop, appropriate clothes, all the supplies the school required. But he also made sure to ask her opinion about everything, to let her have agency in decisions about her own life. He remembered what Elena had said about really seeing people, and he tried to apply that principle to Zoe every single day. She was brilliant, it turned out. The school administered tests and discovered that despite her disrupted education, Zoe was reading at a college level and had a natural aptitude for mathematics that bordered on gifted. She had been teaching herself through library books and internet access at public computers, accumulating knowledge the way some people accumulated possessions. Education was the one thing that could not be taken from her, so she had hoarded it, stored it away against future need. But brilliance did not mean easy adjustment. Zoe struggled with the social dynamics of school, with trusting teachers, with allowing herself to relax into the routine of classes and homework and extracurricular activities. She was so accustomed to instability that stability felt dangerous, like a trap waiting to spring closed. 2 weeks into the school semester, Marcus got a call from Dr. Chen. Zoe had gotten into a fight with another student. Not a physical fight, but a verbal confrontation that had escalated until teachers intervened. The other student, apparently, had made a comment about Zoe being the new charity case, and Zoe had responded with cutting precision about privilege and ignorance that left the other student in tears. Marcus left work immediately and drove to the school. He found Zoe sitting in Dr. Chen's office, her arms crossed defensively, her expression shut down. When she saw him, something flickered in her eyes. Not fear exactly, but anticipation. She was waiting for him to be disappointed, to be done with her, to prove that everyone eventually gave up. "Tell me what happened," Marcus said, sitting down beside her. Zoe shrugged. "Some rich kid with more money than sense decided to make fun of me. I made sure she understood that being wealthy does not make you valuable as a person." She cried. Teachers overreacted. "Here we are, Doctor." Chen spoke up. The other student, Madison, made an inappropriate comment about Zoe's background. Zoe's response was harsh, but not inaccurate. "We are addressing both students' behavior, but I wanted you here because this is Zoe's first significant incident, and I think it is important that we handle it correctly." Marcus looked at Zoe. "What did Madison say exactly?" "She said I should be grateful to be here, because people like me do not usually get chances at schools like this. She said her father probably helped pay for my scholarship through his donations. She said I should try to fit in better instead of acting like I am better than everyone." The words revealed layers of class anxiety and privilege that Marcus recognized from his own life. He had been on both sides of that dynamic at different points. The scholarship student at Harvard who did not quite belong, and later the wealthy donor who funded opportunities without fully considering the humans receiving them. "And what did you say in response?" Zoe's jaw set stubbornly. "I told her that money is just money, that it does not make you smart or kind or worth knowing. I told her that her father's donations probably buy his forgiveness for being a terrible parent who is never home. I told her that she mistakes privilege for personality, and that is why she has friends who like her money but not her actual self." Marcus saw Dr. Chen winced slightly at the accurate brutality of Zoe's assessment. He also saw that Zoe was watching him carefully, waiting to see if he would defend Madison, if he would side with the comfortable wealthy student over the difficult poor one. "That was harsh," Marcus said carefully. It was also probably true, and Madison needed to hear some version of it, though maybe not quite so publicly. Zoe's expression shifted, surprise breaking through the defensive posture. "You are not mad?" "I am not thrilled that you got into a confrontation, but I am also not going to pretend that what Madison said was acceptable just because she said it politely. Cruelty wrapped in politeness is still cruelty, and you are right to call it out. You just need to learn how to call it out in ways that do not escalate to teachers getting involved." Dr. Chen leaned forward. "Zoe, your response came from hurt. Madison's comment touched on your deepest insecurity, which is that you do not belong here, that you are an outsider being tolerated rather than truly accepted. And you defended yourself by attacking her deepest insecurity, which is that her worth is tied entirely to her family's wealth. You were both trying to hurt each other, and you both succeeded. That is not how we build community. Zoe looked down at her hands. I do not know how to be here, she said quietly. Everyone knows I am different. Everyone knows I am the foster kid living with some random rich guy. They look at me like I am an experiment or a story they can tell about how good their school is for accepting people like me. I hate it. I hate feeling like everyone is watching to see if I fail. Marcus felt his chest tighten with recognition. I know that feeling, he said. I spent my first year at Harvard convinced that everyone could tell I did not belong, that I was just pretending to be smart enough, sophisticated enough, wealthy enough to be there. And you know what? Some people were watching and waiting for me to fail, but others were not. Others were just living their own lives, dealing with their own insecurities. The trick is learning to tell the difference. How do you do that? You pay attention. You watch faces instead of watching your own fears. Some people will be like Madison, treating you as less than because it makes them feel better about themselves. Those people are not worth your energy, but some people will be genuine. They will be curious about you, interested in who you are rather than where you came from. Those are the people worth knowing. Zoe considered this. What if I cannot tell the difference? What if I am so used to people being fake that I cannot recognize real when I see it? Then you practice, Marcus said. The same way I am practicing. You make mistakes and learn from them. You take small risks with small connections and see what happens. You let people surprise you sometimes, Doctor. Chen nodded approvingly. That is good advice. Zoe, I am not going to punish you for defending yourself against Madison's classism, but I am going to ask you to work with our counselor on strategies for managing confrontation that do not involve verbal warfare. Can you do that? Zoe nodded slowly. I can try. That is all I ask. Now, Madison is also working with the counselor on understanding her privilege and the harm her comments cause. This is a learning opportunity for both of you. Mr. Chen, can you take Zoe home for the rest of the day? I think she needs some time to decompress. In the car on the way back to the apartment, Zoe was quiet. Marcus let the silence sit, not trying to fill it with empty reassurances or lessons. Sometimes silence was what people needed. Finally, Zoe said, You did not give up on me. Of course not. Madison said that you probably regretted taking me in. That wealthy people get bored of charity cases when they stop being grateful and start being complicated. She said I should enjoy the apartment while it lasts, because eventually you will realize I am too much work. Marcus felt anger rise again on Zoe's behalf. Madison is projecting her own family dynamics onto our situation. She cannot imagine that an adult might commit to a child even when it is difficult. So she assumes everyone is as conditional as her own parents apparently are. But Zoe, I am not going anywhere. You are not a charity case, or a project, or a temporary good deed. You are a person I have chosen to have in my life, and that choice does not change just because you have bad days. What if I have a lot of bad days? What if this gets harder instead of easier? Then it gets harder, and we deal with it together. Zoe, I spent years building walls to keep people out because I was afraid of being hurt. But those walls just made me lonely and miserable. I am learning how to tear them down, and part of that is accepting that relationships are messy and difficult, and they do not always go smoothly. If I wanted easy, I would go back to being isolated, but I do not want easy anymore. I want real. Zoe wiped at her eyes quickly, trying to hide that she was crying. I am not used to people wanting me when I am difficult. Then get used to it, because you are stuck with me, at least until we find you something permanent that is actually good for you. And even then, I am not disappearing. You can be as difficult as you need to be. They spent the rest of the afternoon at the apartment. Marcus ordered Thai food, Zoe's current favorite, and they ate while watching a documentary about space exploration that Zoe had been wanting to see. It was simple and ordinary, and exactly what both of them needed after the intensity of the day. That evening, Marcus's phone rang. It was Elena Rodriguez. Mr. Marcus? Her voice was excited and slightly breathless. My mama said I could call you. She said you gave her your number and said we could reach you if we needed anything. Marcus smiled at the sound of her voice. He had stayed in touch with Elena and Maria since that first meeting at the hotel, checking in periodically, making sure they had what they needed. He had helped Maria find a better job with more reasonable hours. He had connected Elena with a tutor to help her prepare for scholarship applications to private schools. These were not grand philanthropic gestures, but personal interventions in the lives of people who had changed his own life. Elena, it is good to hear from you. What is going on? I have been keeping my notebook like always, and I wrote down so many new observations. But Mr. Marcus, I also wanted to tell you something. Remember how you asked what would happen if a rich person learned to see people the way I do? I remember. I think it is happening. I think you are learning. My mama says you are different now from when we first met you. She says you look at people instead of through them. She says you are becoming more human. Single quotes. Marcus felt emotion catch in his throat. Your mother is very wise. And you are right. I am learning. I met a homeless veteran who taught me about isolation. I met a girl named Zoe who is teaching me about commitment and consistency. And I met you and your mother, and you taught me that I had been living half a life. So yes, I am learning. And it is because people like you were willing to see me and teach me. That makes me happy, Elena said simply. Because, Mr. Marcus, everyone deserves to be whole. Even rich people who forgot how. Maybe especially them, because they can help so many others if they remember how to be human first. The observation was vintage Elena, profound and simple at once. You are absolutely right. Now tell me about your observations. What have you been noticing? Elena launched into an excited explanation of her latest notebook entries, observations about her new school, about the scholarship process, about the differences between teachers who saw students as humans versus teachers who saw them as data points. Marcus listened and asked questions, and marveled at the way this child understood the world with more clarity than most adults. Achieved in a lifetime. When they hung up, Zoe was watching him from the couch. That was the 12-year-old girl? The one who started all this? That was Elena. She wanted to tell me about her observations. She sounds nice, smart. She is both those things. She is also the reason you are here, in a way. If Elena had not called me out for not seeing people, I would never have had breakfast with Mitch. And if I had not been learning from Mitch, I would not have been ready to help you when you needed it. Everything is connected. Zoe nodded slowly, processing this. Can I meet her sometime? Elena? I think that could be arranged. Why? Because I want to thank her for teaching you how to see people. Because if you had not learned that, you would have walked right past me on the street, and I would still be out there, cold and scared and alone. So I owe her. I owe all of them, really. The people who taught you how to be human again. Marcus crossed to the couch and sat down beside Zoe. You do not owe anyone anything, Zoe. But I think Elena would like to meet you too. She collects stories of people learning and growing. You would make a good entry in her notebook. What would she write about me? Probably something about how the most difficult students often become the best teachers, or how people who have been hurt learn to test love to make sure it is real, or how courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to trust even when trust is terrifying. Zoe leaned against him slightly, a gesture of affection that was still new and tentative, but growing more natural each day. Is that what I am doing? Being courageous? Every single day, Marcus said. Every time you choose to stay instead of run. Every time you let me help instead of pushing me away. Every time you allow yourself to hope that this might work out, you are being incredibly brave. And I see it, Zoe. I really see it. She was quiet for a moment, then said softly, I see you too, Marcus. I see that you are trying. I see that you are scared sometimes too. I see that you are learning how to be a person again, just like me. We are both scared and learning and trying. Maybe that is what family is supposed to be. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. Some final wall crumbling under the weight of this girl's honest observation. She was right. This was what family was supposed to be. Not perfect people performing perfect roles, but flawed humans choosing to be real with each other, scared and learning and trying together. Yeah, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Maybe that is exactly what family is supposed to be. 3 months passed. and Marcus barely recognized his own life. The penthouse that had once been a monument to expensive loneliness had transformed into something that felt startlingly like a home. Zoe's presence changed everything. Her books spread across the coffee table, her music playing from speakers that had been silent for years. Her questions and observations and occasional arguments filling spaces that had been empty for so long Marcus had forgotten they were meant to hold sound. He still had Thursday mornings with Mitch, but now Zoe sometimes joined them. The three of them made an unlikely trio at the diner, the billionaire and the homeless veteran and the foster kid. But Jenny treated them like family, and the other regulars stopped staring after the first few weeks. Mitch and Zoe had bonded quickly, recognizing in each other the particular resilience of people who had survived circumstances that should have broken them. Marcus had also arranged for Mitch to have access to veteran services he had been avoiding for years, not by forcing or manipulating, but by simply making information available and offering to accompany Mitch to appointments if he wanted company. Slowly, carefully, Mitch began engaging with the system again. He started seeing a therapist who specialized in PTSD. He enrolled in a program that helped veterans find housing. He even reconnected with his daughter, who had been searching for him for 2 years, but could not find him because Mitch had deliberately stayed off-grid. "You did not have to do all this," Mitch said one Thursday morning after his daughter had visited the week before. A reunion that left both of them crying and laughing and trying to rebuild something they thought was permanently broken. "I did not do anything," Marcus replied. "I just walked beside you while you did the hard work yourself." "That is not nothing," Mitch said. "Walking beside someone while they do hard work is everything. It is the difference between surviving alone and healing with support. You gave me that gift, Marcus. You and this weird little family we accidentally built." Marcus looked around the diner at their strange family. Mitch, who had taught him about isolation and connection. Zoe, who taught him about commitment and consistency. Jenny, who had taught him that seeing people was a practice, not a one-time event. Elena and Maria, who visited monthly now and taught him that wisdom had nothing to do with wealth. Even his assistant Patricia, who had become something closer to a friend once Marcus started treating her like a person instead of a function. These were his people, not because they could advance his career or increase his net worth or provide some strategic advantage, but because they were real with him and let him be real with them, because they saw him and let themselves be seen, because they understood that being human meant being vulnerable and messy and sometimes difficult, and they chose to stay anyway. His relationship with his son Michael had also begun to shift. It started with an honest phone call where Marcus admitted that he had been a terrible father, that he had taught Michael all the wrong lessons about trust and connection, and that he was trying to learn different lessons now. Michael had been skeptical at first, waiting for this to be another empty promise or temporary phase. But Marcus kept showing up. He called regularly. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He shared what he was learning from Zoe and Mitch and Elena. And slowly, carefully, Michael began to open up. He admitted that he was lonely at Yale, that he had lots of acquaintances, but no real friends, because he did not know how to let people in. He admitted that he was studying economics, not because he loved it, but because he thought it was what his father wanted. He admitted that he was terrified of becoming exactly like Marcus used to be, isolated and wealthy and miserable. "Then do not become that," Marcus told him during one particularly honest conversation. "Learn from my mistakes. I spent decades building walls and calling it wisdom. Do not make the same error. Stay open. Stay human. Let people matter to you even when it is scary." "Is that what you're doing now?" Michael asked. "With Zoe and everyone else?" "That is exactly what I am doing. And Michael, it is terrifying and complicated and sometimes painful. But it is also the only thing that has made me feel actually alive in years. Money cannot buy what these people have given me. Connection, meaning, the feeling of mattering to someone for reasons that have nothing to do with what I can provide. That is wealth. That is the richest gift anyone can receive." There was a long pause, then Michael said quietly, "I would like to meet them, Zoe and the others. I would like to see what made you change." "They did not make me change," Marcus corrected gently. They just showed me what I was missing and gave me reasons to do the hard work of changing myself. But yes, I would like you to meet them. I think you would learn something. I think they would learn something from you too. Michael visited the following month during his spring break. He arrived expecting to find his father playing savior to disadvantaged people, some kind of ego-driven philanthropy project. What he found instead was a genuine community of people who cared about each other, who challenged each other, who showed up for each other in ways that had nothing to do with obligation or transaction. He met Zoe and was immediately impressed by her intelligence and her refusal to be impressed by anyone's credentials or wealth. She treated Michael the way she treated everyone, with cautious openness and sharp observation, willing to give him a chance, but not willing to pretend he was special just because he was Marcus's son. He met Mitch at one of the Thursday breakfasts and listened to the veteran talk about isolation and healing with more honesty than Michael had heard in any Yale classroom. Mitch did not soften his story or make it inspirational. He just told the truth about what it meant to lose everything and slowly, painfully, rebuild a life worth living. He met Elena and Maria and watched his father interact with them with a warmth and presence that Michael barely recognized. This was not the distant, calculating man Michael had grown up with. This was someone who listened, who laughed, who asked questions because he genuinely cared about the answers. "What happened to you?" Michael asked his father after Elena and Maria left. After another evening where Marcus had been fully present and engaged in a way Michael had never witnessed before. "I remembered how to be human," Marcus said simply. "Or maybe I learned it for the first time. I am not sure which. But these people, they taught me that everything I thought mattered actually matters very little. And everything I thought was irrelevant is actually what life is built on: connection, presence, being real. Letting yourself care even when caring means you might get hurt." Michael was quiet for a long moment, processing. "I want that," he finally said. "I want to know how to do what you are doing. I do not want to spend my life the way you spent yours, successful and isolated and miserable. But I do not know how to be different." "Start by paying attention," Marcus said. "Really look at people. Notice them. Ask questions not because you are supposed to, but because you are genuinely curious. Take risks on connection, even when it is uncomfortable. Find people who have nothing to gain from you and learn from them." That is what I did. That is what changed everything. Over the next few days, Michael practiced. He had real conversations with Zoe about school and fear and learning to trust. He went to breakfast with Mitch and asked questions about rebuilding after loss. He sat with Elena while she showed him her notebook full of observations. And he started keeping his own notebook, recording what he noticed when he actually paid attention to the world around him. On his last evening before returning to Yale, Michael and Marcus sat on the penthouse balcony watching the city lights flicker in the darkness below. It was the same view Marcus had stared at months ago when he felt nothing, when his expensive isolation had seemed like wisdom rather than prison. But everything looked different now, because everything was different. "Dad," Michael said, and the word landed with weight because Michael so rarely used it. "Thank you for changing. Thank you for showing me that it is possible to be successful without being isolated, that you can have money without losing your humanity." I needed to see that it was possible. Marcus felt emotion catch in his throat. I needed to see it was possible too, and I could not have done it without Elena calling me out for not seeing people, without Maria teaching me about smart trust, without Mitch showing me what isolation really costs, without Zoe giving me a reason to practice commitment. They saved my life, Michael. Not traumatically, not from physical death, but from the kind of slow death that happens when you stop being human and just start existing. Elena saved all of us then. Michael said, "That 12-year-old girl with a notebook. She saw what you needed, and she was brave enough to tell you the truth. That is the richest gift anyone could give." "It really is," Marcus agreed. "The richest gift is not money or success or any material thing. It is being seen, being known, being called back to your own humanity by people who refuse to let you hide." Elena gave me that gift, and then Mitch and Zoe and Maria and all the others kept giving it, kept seeing me, kept reminding me that being human is worth the risk, They sat in comfortable silence for a while, father and son, beginning to rebuild a relationship that had been more obligation than connection for too many years. Marcus thought about how far he had traveled from that February evening when he sat in the same spot feeling absolutely nothing. He thought about the chain of small choices that had led him here, stopping to talk to Elena instead of walking away, showing up for breakfast with Mitch every Thursday, opening his door to Zoe, staying present even when it was uncomfortable, letting people matter. "You know what is funny?" Michael said. "You spent your whole life accumulating wealth, building an empire, becoming successful by every measure society uses, and none of it made you happy. But a poor girl with a notebook and a homeless vet and a foster kid taught you what actually matters, and now you are happier than I have ever seen you." "It is almost like the whole system is backwards." "It is completely backwards," Marcus confirmed. "We are taught that wealth equals success equals happiness. But Elena showed me that true wealth has nothing to do with money. True wealth is having people who see you, having people you can be real with, having reasons to care about something beyond your own comfort and security. That is richness. That is the inheritance worth passing down. Is that what you are doing now? Passing down a different kind of inheritance?" Marcus considered the question. "I suppose I am. Not just to you, though I hope you take these lessons with you, but also to Zoe, to the other kids at her school who are watching to see if adults can be trusted, to Mitch's daughter who is learning that people can change, to Elena who is collecting observations about how humans can grow. I am trying to pass down the lesson that it is never too late to become who you are supposed to be, that walls can come down brick by brick, that isolation is not wisdom and vulnerability is not weakness, that the richest life is built on connection, not protection." Michael nodded slowly. "I am going to try to live that way. It is going to be hard because Yale is full of people who think exactly the way you used to think. They are all climbing, all competing, all protecting themselves from each other. But I am going to practice what you taught me. I am going to look at faces instead of credentials. I am going to take risks on real connection. I am going to find my own Elena and Mitch and Zoe, people who will teach me things I cannot learn in classrooms. That is all I can ask," Marcus said. "Just try, just practice, just stay open to being surprised by people. The rest will follow." Inside the apartment, they could hear Zoe laughing at something on her phone. The sound was so normal, so domestic, so completely different from the silence that used to fill this space. Marcus smiled, thinking about how one conversation in a hotel hallway had cascaded into this entire transformation. How Elena's simple observation about seeing faces instead of things had unlocked something fundamental that Marcus had been missing his entire adult life. The next morning, Marcus drove Michael to the airport. Before he got out of the car, Michael turned to his father. "Dad, I know this is going to sound strange, but I am proud of you. Not for being successful or wealthy or any of the things I used to think mattered. I am proud of you for being brave enough to change, for admitting you were wrong about how to live, for learning from people most successful men would never notice. That takes more courage than building a business empire." Marcus had to swallow hard before he could respond. "That means more than you know, Michael. More than any business success or financial milestone. Having my son be proud of me for becoming human again, that is the real achievement." They hugged, and it was not the awkward, obligatory embrace they usually managed, but something real and warm and connected. Michael got out of the car, grabbed his bag, then turned back. "I will call you next week. Not because I need money, or because Mom is making me. Just to talk, because I want to hear what you are learning, and tell you what I am learning. Is that okay?" "That is more than okay," Marcus said. "That is perfect." He watched Michael walk into the terminal, then drove back to the apartment where Zoe was probably already awake and ready to debate something over breakfast, where his life had become full and complicated and messy and real, where he woke up each morning with reasons to care about things beyond his own comfort, where he had finally found what Elena's mother called true wealth. That evening, Marcus took out his own notebook. He had started keeping one after watching Elena, recording his observations about what he was learning. He flipped to a blank page and wrote, "Today, I learned that the richest gift you can receive is not money or success, but the truth about yourself delivered by people brave enough to say it. Elena gave me that gift when she called me out for not seeing faces. Mitch gave me that gift when he showed me what isolation costs. Zoe gives me that gift every day when she trusts me, despite having every reason not to. Maria gave me that gift when she taught me about smart trust and pure connections. And Michael gave me that gift today when he said he was proud of me, not for what I built, but for who I am becoming. True wealth is not in bank accounts. It is in notebooks full of observations. It is in Thursday morning breakfasts with homeless veterans. It is in foster children who test your commitment until they believe it is real. It is in 12-year-old girls who see what adults miss. It is in conversations that change you, in connections that transform you, in the courage to let yourself be seen. I spent decades accumulating the wrong kind of wealth. I built empires while my humanity eroded. I protected myself from betrayal by protecting myself from life. And I was rich in every way that does not matter and poor in every way that does. But I am not poor anymore. Not in the ways that count. I have people who see me. I have people I care about. I have reasons to be present and engaged and real. I have learned that vulnerability is strength, and connection is courage, and being human is the greatest achievement possible. Elena Rodriguez taught me all of this. A poor girl with a notebook who looked at a wealthy stranger and saw what he needed most. She gave me her richest gift, the unseen life lessons about what actually matters. And in doing so, she gave me back my life. That is the inheritance I want to pass down. Not money or property or business empires, but the knowledge that the richest life is built on seeing and being seen, on caring and being cared about, on choosing connection even when it is risky, on learning from people who have nothing material to teach, but everything essential to share. That is wealth. That is richness. That is the gift worth giving and receiving. And I will spend the rest of my life practicing what Elena taught me in that hotel hallway. I will look at faces instead of things. I will see people instead of functions. I will take risks on connection. I will let myself be human, messy and flawed and vulnerable and real. Because that is what the richest life looks like. Not perfect, just present. Not protected, just open. Not isolated, just connected. That is Elena's gift to me. That is what true wealth means. Marcus closed the notebook and looked around his apartment, at Zoe's books on the coffee table, at photos of Elena and Maria he had printed and framed, at the spare key to Mitch's new apartment sitting on the counter, a symbol of progress and hope, at the evidence of life being lived rather than just survived. He smiled, feeling something he had not felt in decades. Not satisfaction or accomplishment or any of the empty metrics he used to pursue, but genuine happiness, the kind that comes from being connected to people who matter, from caring about things beyond yourself, from learning lessons you cannot buy from teachers who cost nothing and give everything. Elena Rodriguez, a poor girl with a notebook, had given him the richest gift imaginable. She had shown him how to be human again. And in learning that lesson, Marcus Chen had discovered that true wealth had been waiting all along in the last place he thought to look, in connection, in presence, in being real, in the faces he had forgotten how to see.